When you cross Fern Bridge over the Eel River in Northern California, you may well be entering the land that time forgot. Nestled against the hills of the Eel River Valley and surrounded by lush dairy farms, the Victorian village of Ferndale resembles a small European village with many church steeples, well-kept gardens, and a fairy tale ambiance. Even if you're just visiting Ferndale, you're about as far away from the turbulence of big cities, the noise of industrialization, and the mass of humanity as you can get.
I came to Ferndale 21 years ago to escape the madness of San Francisco, and I found this wonderful little town that was almost like a little fairy tale. There were cows everywhere, and the day that I drove across the bridge there were blue skies and white clouds and a rainbow. And so I immediately fell in love with Ferndale, and I fell in love with the people of Ferndale.
I was born and raised here on a dairy. My father had a dairy for years and years. Ferndale's always going to be home. Something always draws you back. You leave, it's like you're on a short rubber band, and you come back.
Well, I met my husband in '77 at Cal Poly, and up until then I'd never even considered Northern California. He mentioned about this magic town that he lived in, and his family had lived here over 80 years, and it's where dairying cows were out on this lush pasture, and both being from dairy background, but I never remembering what cows on lush background and green fields were, you know, our dairy was always on feedlot where cows were contained. So he mentioned about this place, and we were kind of dating and decided I'd come up and see what this place was like. Well, it was like a fairy tale, you know. Everywhere you saw, we came in the spring of the year, and everywhere you came as you drove up the redwoods, you saw these beautiful, lush green mountains, and you saw flowers in the hills. And so as we're coming, I thought, well, what makes this town so magical that people would want to live here? And the closer you got into town, you saw this Victorian architecture, and you saw all these stores. And as we came out to the ranch, he came by, and I kept going, is that the house? Is that the house? And he'd say no. And as we drove a little closer, we found this. The problem we had was that I was from a Holstein dairy, which is the black and white cows, and my husband's from the Jerseys, is trying to figure out how to compromise.
But for all the easy living in the valley that withstood the test of time, and that includes a couple of massive floods, the people and buildings of Ferndale hadn't heard from Mother Nature in quite a while. On April 25th at 11:06 a.m., the town of Ferndale was hit by a huge earthquake, reaching 6.9 on the Richter scale. As brick storefronts toppled and windows shattered, citizens and authorities reacted with swift rescue operations and prompt cleanup, while showing overflowing compassion for fellow residents. Captured on videotape by Cox Cable videographers, let's relive those moments before, during, and after the earthquake of '92. The morning of April 25th was a crisp, pleasant, sun-filled morning. You could even say it was rather warm for a late spring day. Crowds were gathering on Main Street for the first Best of the West Fest. The building facades were dressed in a Western theme, and costumes were donned by the townspeople and folks from neighboring towns, all enjoying the first events of the weekend. Humboldt Creamery sponsored a taste test to see if you could tell their new line of light milk products from whole milk. Most couldn't. The Cattlemen's Association gathered brands from ranchers all across the county to be displayed in a single setting for everyone to see. Youth organizations sold cotton candy. The county's resident clowns arrived in full glory, and all around smiles and laughter filled the sidewalks as the horse parade began down Main Street at 10 a.m.
It's all wicker. It's one of the very few that I would imagine is still remaining, especially in that kind of shape. You look good, Sonny. Sonny's from Borton.
Now, you can see here that some riders are having trouble controlling their horses that day. Many riders believe that flags and banners were spooking them. And maybe this proves that animals do have a sense for earthquake detection before one hits. Following the parade, kids took pony rides, while parents milled around Main Street, browsing in shops, visiting with friends, all while getting ready to watch a mock gunfight to be staged down the middle of Main Street.
Well, I'm gonna kill him. You know why? Because he looks like me.
The showdown was drawing near. As the good guys and gunslingers discussed who would fire the first shot, it's now 11:06 a.m.
Barricades out of here, get the street clear.
Hundreds of people were in town that Saturday, and the streets were packed with panicked people. However, most members of the town's police and volunteer fire department were close by and started disaster proceedings very quickly. In the days that followed, townspeople and even California Governor Pete Wilson would praise the Ferndale Volunteer Fire Department for its response to the emergency.
These people are wonderfully dedicated men who are compassionate. They're highly talented, and they proved it one more time. You know, during the earthquake and the subsequent quakes at night, the concern was not for their own homes. Their own homes, some of the members had their own homes on the ground. And their concern basically was the citizens of our community. And it's the kind of thing that money can't buy. And I guess that's why it's a volunteer fire department.
4S2, 4A1. Where are you at? You get status.
They're just good people. And the emergency services were as good as they could be anywhere. And I came from the paramedic system in San Francisco, and I know that this service here is far superior to that.
Amazingly, no one was killed, though throughout the county, 116 people were injured, 13 sent to hospitals, with only 5 admitted.
Let's get back on this side, guys. Pick her back on this side.
Throughout the county, about 159 homes were destroyed, 727 homes with minor to major damage, and 150 businesses or public buildings with major damage. For Humboldt County, an assessed damage of $61 million was totaled in losses. As things started to calm down, shown here 2 or 3 hours after the initial quake, building inspectors assessed building damage and posted entrance notices on each building. Shortly after the quakes of April 25th and 26th, the magnitudes were upgraded to 7.1 for the initial quake on the 25th and 6.6 and 6.7 for the following aftershocks on April 26th. Residents began almost immediately to board up windows and check up on neighbors. It seems everyone had stories worth retelling, probably for generations.
I was in my gallery, the Eifert Gallery, and thought it was the normal fare here, small thing, but all of a sudden it got very much bigger than I could handle, and that's on the second floor. So I made it for the stairs and fell down the stairs, fell over the rubble of falling art and sculptures going on the floor and windows breaking, and made it outside to hearing the screams of people, I guess in the front of the street where the brick was coming off of the fascia in the grocery store. And lots of smoke, but no rumbling, which I thought was interesting. I've been in some big 7-pointers that there's a lot of rumbling, and there didn't seem to be any of that, but a lot of smoke, and nothing I care to live through again. It's a bad place to have an art gallery. Not good. Not good.
We were running the Ferndale Market at the Fireman's Pavilion, and of course there was a lot of damage there because people had antiques and collectibles set up on the tables, and at the time when the earthquake hit, the ceiling panels all fell down on everyone. I don't think there were any serious injuries. One woman, there were some superficial cuts from the panels falling. One woman had possibly a more serious injury. She was taken to the hospital. That's all that I know.
Were people running out of the building fast as they could?
Do you know, it was so confusing that it was hard to tell if some people were running
Some
out.
were running. Most of us were diving under tables. That's why I have chili. This is my lunch right here. Chili all up and down. I got one bite of chili, and the earthquake hit, and we threw chili all over each other as we dove under the table.
I think the real concern is that there wasn't any injury there, and there very well could have been with all of the ceiling falling.
Someone said that one of the ceiling things came down and sliced through a display thing that somebody had built to hold their puzzles and stuff, and just sliced it right down through the middle.
But no major injury.
No.
I don't believe so, no.
Where were you when it happened?
Right, standing out front talking to my friend, and I backed into the doorway, but I could feel it moving back and forth, and so everyone ran to the street. Got my hand cut, and glass was flying everywhere. It's just a mess. It looks like 1906. There's a postcard actually up in the upstairs of that my dad's building in 1906. It was exact same, tilted to the side and up.
How much damage was done to the gallery?
Everything. I don't know if we'll get it back actually, because it slid over and everything. I don't know.
Were you inside or outside?
Right, I was right in the front door.
When it hit?
Yeah.
Was there anybody upstairs?
Yeah, my girlfriend and yeah, she was upstairs by herself. Knocked her onto the floor.
Yeah. Nobody hurt though in your building?
No. Well, no. The lady I was talking to got cut on the head and was bleeding everywhere. Yeah, no one hurt real bad.
Did you run out into the street when it happened?
Well, after stuff started falling and it felt like the whole building was going to fall, because I had my hand on the door and it just everywhere.
It's how close are you to the palace? A couple of doors down?
Across the parking lot, yeah, so about 4 buildings down.
And that's where I hear that the main damage was. I mean, not damage, but injuries were.
Yeah, the whole Valley grocery at the top fell down on the sidewalk, which I'm surprised no one got killed there, or if they did. And there's a car demolished behind there. Whoa.
I've seen that. Lucky just to get out of the middle, huh?
Yep. That was I don't know what we're gonna do. My dad's gone. I left a message for him. I said, "Come straight back." Looks like 1906.
I was out in the street, actually, in the middle of the street, and I immediately went into my building, and of course the blacksmith shop, everything came down.
And then what happened?
Well, and then our emergency response team went into action, and of course I'm part of that, even though I'm retired, and so we started taking care of people.
How many injuries were there?
I personally saw 4 right on Main Street.
You assisted in 2?
Assisted in 2.
Right. Is pretty much almost every store damaged?
I think every store is damaged. Yes, we've got some off their foundations. We've got bricks down. I don't think there's anybody that isn't touched by this one.
What do you think is going to happen from here?
We'll take it 1 minute at a time. Our biggest concern right now is our people who can't communicate. We're doing a house-to-house throughout the town and throughout the country, simply because we don't know that someone isn't hurt inside of a house. So we're conducting a house-to-house now, and we also know that our friends in Petrolia are in real bad trouble.
But it'll all work out in the end.
Oh yeah, the town survived, and Ferndale's still standing, so we're hanging in there.
All of a sudden the lights went out and the building just shook and shook. Went under what we could, and that's what happened. I don't know what else. The theater's in good shape, and much better than...
Were you inside when it happened?
Inside, up on the 2nd floor, in the office.
Was there anybody hurt in your building?
No one was hurt. Everything was fine. The building, nothing crumbled. Things fell off shelves and things like that, but nothing really serious happened.
How many injuries do you think there are?
I don't know. I saw one small child that they took out. Nothing really physically happened to her except shock. And I haven't heard about anything else.
Well, I was leaning right up against the garage. They were reading a letter, and it started to shake, and I turned around and grabbed a hold of the building, and it was going so bad I thought I'd better get out from underneath here. So I went from there and got over to the car, which was walking. I held onto the car, and I had to finally let loose of it because it was bouncing this way. sideways. It was going just like this. It was a mess. Yeah.
Just in the front, serving someone, and I mean, one of us said earthquake, and people ran for the door, and children were screaming and crying, and mothers were yelling. It was just like in the movies. It was terrifying. It was really, and then it shook violently, and people were under the doorways, and I don't know, were some people under tables?
I was under the counter. That's where I was.
People.
I was under the counter. One of the other
Tried
girls was
to do the
screaming.
right
We were
thing.
trying to calm everybody down. Hold still.
Right.
It was very frightening. Very frightening. Like she said, like one of those cheap movies. Same thing.
I have a daughter that lives here in town, so I rushed in to see how they made out.
How did they do?
Well, it knocked everything off the shelves and everything, but no structural damage or anything.
Have you lived here your whole life?
Oh, about 50 years.
About 50? So you've seen some earthquakes in your time here?
Yeah, but I think in '54 we had one that was about this bad. Maybe not. It wasn't centered like this one is here. At that time I lived in Ferndale, and it done quite a bit of damage there.
It was very traumatic because I heard it come long before it hit. Like a roar, rumble, you know, and then I kind of sat up to look out the window and I could see the cattle were running. My dog was acting really weird and whining and barking, and all of a sudden, boom, it hit. So there was just no warning, and then you didn't know how bad it was going to be. It just was very traumatic for me because I couldn't get out. My entertainment center had fallen over, and I'd finally gotten up off the couch and got to the French doors, and they wouldn't open. So you could have peeled me off the wall, I'm sure. So I don't ever want to go through it again. I was just real thankful I wasn't in the store.
I was working at the Valley Grocery at the time, and I had just come back from the storage room, and I was waiting on a couple of customers, and you could feel it coming, and I just thought it was going to be a little aftershock, but it kept on getting worse and louder, and next thing I know, we're down on the floor and riding it out. And
so did you actually, were you thrown to the floor, or did you actually?
No, I just calmly, sat down and
cover yourself with something?
no, I covered one of my customers. I had him come from the window, and then the other three laid down on the floor. But there was nothing falling, from the roof. It was all from the shelves that was falling. And I think what really made me terrified was when the bricks came off the front of the store and then hit the sidewalk. It was so loud. I got up after the earthquake and helped people out and looked out front to see if there was any injuries. And then I started yelling for Jack because he's in the fire department. And I didn't know which way to go at first, so I went out the back door. Big mistake. And that's when I saw the cars smashed by the bricks from the back of the building.
And what happened was my husband and we had just brought in the hay wagons, and we were walking up towards the kids to double check on the 4-H exhibit, when all of a sudden we felt this kind of like a little shake, and at first I thought, boy, I must be more tired than I thought. And my husband goes, look at Rings, the Rings drugstore. The top seemed to sway from one side to the other side. And I says, oh. And he goes, it's an earthquake. And so I kind of started to run towards our kids. We could see all the 4-Hers, and I was kind of trying to yell at them to get away from the buildings, but because of their education, they had realized they needed to get away. And then all of a sudden to the right, I kind of stopped in my track because I heard this noise, and it was the bricks coming down off the Valley grocery store smashing these two cars. And it didn't even take 10 seconds, and those two cars were like pancakes. And, there was some screaming going on and everything, and people were running out of the buildings because they weren't sure of them. But the thing that amazed me the most was that everybody was concerned. The education factor was there. They were just saying, do you know where you're at? Is everybody okay? All the kids were clustered together, and they were concerned about their animals, but the kids were clustered together. The people were out in the street hugging one another to make sure that they were okay. The merchants were there. No one was really concerned about the materialistic things, about what was in the store. Oh, somebody's going to rob me. They were just questioning whether or not somebody was safe where else but Ferndale could you find this?
Since the April 25th and 26th earthquakes, many families were displaced, having to move in with other family members or lifelong friends.
And that's one of the nicest things about living in Ferndale, was here you have this big earthquake. People are not thinking so much as part as their materialistic things. They think and they care about one another and one another's families. They're concerned when a family had to be displaced and their kids separated out and farmed out among other farmers. Families, where else could you go to live where you find that sense of community concern? There was another farmer that has retired from the dairy business, and he opened up a motel. He went to the displaced families that he could find that needed a place to stay. He closed down his motel and offered them a place to live until they could find their surroundings. And that's what Ferndale is. It's a community of people working together and caring about one another.
Basically, we only have, so far, only 2 buildings have had to come down in Ferndale. So we have a lot of people who are out of their homes, but they're in the process now of being rebuilt. I must hand it to FEMA and to the SBA and to Red Cross and all of the agencies really that came into our town, because they did identify the people in need. For those people who needed housing, they provided it. And for those people who needed immediate funds, the funds were there. And sometimes we think that government doesn't work. And I think in this case it is working. We have, like I say, we have an awful lot of people who are in temporary housing, and their homes are being worked on and things are happening. And we really learned a lesson about our government. Our government can respond, and they can move quickly when they need to. And that certainly has been our experience here. I think probably the one thing that I would like for people to leave Ferndale with is the fact that what they're seeing is not some cute little renovation. This is not a town that has been built in response to any tax dollar or any tax money at all. What you see in Ferndale has always been this way. It's not a renovation. We're going through some renovation now to upgrade our buildings to earthquake standards, but these buildings have always been this way. So you're looking at the real McCoy, and that's why it's a state historical landmark. We are the only town left that is intact. It will be rebuilt, and I'm sure that it will be rebuilt in the same manner, the same look to it that it's always had.
This footage, shown 2 months later, shows Ferndale thriving as always, with stores wide open greeting tourists and Humboldt County curiosity seekers. Residents are rebuilding the damaged Victorians and are back on their feet, with a lot of help from a lot of people, inside and outside of Humboldt County. The townspeople and business owners of Ferndale wish to thank all who have contributed relief to Ferndale and neighboring communities. From your moral support and financial outpouring, Ferndale can not only rebuild the town, but rebuild lives.